Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so incredibly pumped you're here today because we're going to unpack something that is absolutely crucial, yet somehow still so misunderstood in the transportation world. We're talking about general liability insurance for truckers. Now, if you're an owner-operator, or maybe you run a fleet and you're sitting there thinking your primary auto coverage has you completely protected from every possible angle, well, you might want to grab a notepad and stick around for this one. We are going to dive deep into the hidden risks that exist entirely off the road. There's a saying in the industry right now that hits the nail on the head. Most truckers think auto liability insurance protects them from everything until someone slips at their yard, gets injured at a loading dock, or sues their business for property damage. That perfectly captures the biggest misconception out there today. We see this constant clash of myth versus reality where operators just kind of assume their standard trucking insurance is this impenetrable, magical shield for everything related to their livelihood. But as you're going to see today, that shield has some major business-threatening gaps in it. Okay, let's dive into this. There's a fundamental difference here that you literally need to memorize. Think of it like a hard line drawn in the sand. On one side, we have auto liability. That's your driving-related on-road accidents. If you crash the rig on the highway, boom, this kicks in. But on the exact opposite side, we have general liability. This is for your business operations and off-road accidents. Basically, if the wheels aren't turning on the highway, your auto liability probably isn't going to help you out. So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the big insurance myth. 2, what general liability covers. 3, what is not covered. 4, real-world off-road risks. And finally, number 5, avoiding costly insurance mistakes. All right, kicking things off with part 1, the big insurance myth. Look, you are not just a driver. You are operating a business. And I really want to validate the insane amount of hard work you put in behind the wheel. You're out there navigating brutal traffic and wild weather just to keep the supply chain moving. But we got to elevate our mindset here for a second. The moment you step out of that cab, you don't magically stop being a business owner, right? You're still interacting with brokers, you're managing yards, communicating with shippers, you have a physical presence. And because you are a business, you face hidden, everyday risks that have absolutely zero to do with driving a truck. I mean, businesses get sued constantly, even if a claim is totally false or the injury seems like no big deal. Which brings us right into section 2, what general liability covers. And this brilliantly illustrates the 4 main pillars that general liability is built on. Number 1 is bodily injury. That means injuries to other people caused by your business operations, like say a broker slipping on a puddle of oil in your yard. Number 2 is property damage. Think of your forklift accidentally backing into a customer's expensive equipment while you're unloading freight. Number 3, legal defense costs. This one is absolutely massive because honestly, even if you are totally innocent and you win the lawsuit, the attorney fees alone can bankrupt a small company. And finally, number 4, personal and advertising injury. Actually, let's pause on that 4th point for a second because this is the one that surprises almost everyone in transportation. Personal and advertising injury is protection that covers things like libel, slander, copyright claims, and advertising disputes. Just think about that. This coverage has nothing, and I mean nothing, to do with physical trucks or heavy cargo or driving. It is pure, modern-day business protection. Just imagine dealing with a social media defamation claim or an advertising dispute. What if your trucking company posts a catchy marketing slogan or a recruitment post online, and out of nowhere, another company sues you, claiming you copied their brand and ruined their reputation? No way your primary auto liability is touching that. But general liability is uniquely designed to step right in and help cover those legal costs and settlement expenses. It's really fascinating how wide of a net this casts over your daily operations, especially in today's digital age. Moving on to section 3, what is not covered? Setting boundaries is key here. Let's just do a rapid-fire rundown of these boundaries so you know exactly what this policy is not for. It does not cover auto accidents. That is strictly for your primary auto policy. It does not cover damage to your truck. That's physical damage insurance. It does not cover your cargo. You're going to need motor truck cargo insurance for that. And it does not cover employee injuries because that falls under workers' comp. The rule of thumb here is super simple. If there is a specialized, highly specific policy for it in the trucking world, general liability steps back. All right, let's get out of the theory and into reality with section 4, real-world off-road risks. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is $300,000. Where does a terrifying number like that come from? Actually, let me back up. It definitely wasn't from a multi-vehicle pileup on the interstate. No, this comes from a real-world scenario where a trucking company owned a tiny, unassuming little dispatch office. A visitor walked in, tripped over some loose wiring on the floor, and suffered a severe back injury. The medical bills alone hit $120,000, and the resulting lawsuit? $300,000. Without general liability stepping in to cover that defense and settlement, literally one tripped wire could have collapsed that entire business. Here is another incredibly visceral off-road claim for you, $180,000. In this scenario, a driver was backing their truck near a warehouse dock. While they were unloading, a pallet jack slipped. It ended up damaging a huge chunk of customer inventory and, worst of all, injured a warehouse employee in the process. Again, because the truck wasn't actively driving on the road, primary auto liability just does not apply. General liability is what swoops in here to cover the property damage and the injury claim so that trucking company doesn't have to cough up $180,000 straight out of pocket. Okay, deep breath. Let's pivot to some practical takeaways in Section 5, avoiding costly insurance mistakes. Let's look at the actual math here. Typical coverage limits are usually $1 million per occurrence and a $2 million aggregate for the whole year. But check out the average annual cost. It's surprisingly low. It generally falls somewhere between $300 and $1,500 a year. When you contrast a maximum $1,500 premium with that massive $300,000 lawsuit payout we just talked about, the return on investment is glaringly obvious, right? It's an incredibly cost-effective safety net. But, even when operators realize they need it, mistakes still happen. The most common ones, thinking auto covers everything, which I think we've thoroughly debunked today, buying minimum limits, which, let's be real, a single serious lawsuit will eat through in a heartbeat, ignoring contract requirements, and completely misunderstanding exclusions. Also, I really want to issue a warning to leased owner operators right now. Assuming your carrier's insurance covers your independent operations is a super dangerous game. Always, always verify. Plus, if you're an independent fleet, a lot of brokers and shippers literally mandate this coverage. If you don't have it, you are missing out on some very lucrative freight. So how do we make absolutely sure we get this right? Well, here is your checklist. These are the exact sequential questions you have to ask your insurance agent before buying a policy. Do not skip any of these. Step 1, does it cover loading and unloading? Because as we saw, that's where a huge chunk of claims happen. Step 2, are subcontractors covered? Step 3, what specific exclusions are hiding in the fine print? And step 4, does this exact policy satisfy the specific requirements of the brokers and shippers I want to work with? Seriously, do not sign a single thing until you have clear answers to all 4. Which brings us to the end of our explainer. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this lingering, provocative thought. Could one accident completely off the road financially destroy your business? We spend so much time, energy, and money stressing about the miles we drive, but the business risks when the engine is turned off are just as real and honestly just as devastating. Take a really close look at your own protection. Ask your agent those tough questions and make sure your whole operation is truly secured. Thanks so much for diving into this with me today, and I'll see you in the next explainer.